Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our September Food Security Community Call. It's hard to believe that it is September already, but here we are. So glad that so many of you were able to join us here today, and we have a lot of great information to share with you on today's call. So I'm not going to take up too much time at the start here. But we are thrilled to have folks joining us from the DHHS licensing office and our friend Patrick Campbell to talk about, also from DHHS, just to kind of walk us through, I think we are all noticing an increase in severe weather events. This past summer definitely had a few interesting calls for our area. And we know that there are things that can happen, emergencies in the winter as well. So we are just so glad to have our speakers here today, joining us to share, how you can best have your operations, your clients, your employees or volunteers, how you can be keeping everyone safe during those situations. So I am going to turn it over to Jaime Park, to Ian Madden, and to Shantel Robinson from the DHHS office, licensing office, and they will kick us off with how to keep your food and your clients safe during emergency weather situations. Jaime, thanks so much.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen. Okay. First of all, can everybody hear me? We're good? Okay, yeah. Perfect. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jaime Park, and I am with Montgomery County's Department of Health and Human Services, Licensure and Regulatory Services Division. I'm here today along with my colleague, Ian Madden, and our wonderful program manager, Shantel Robinson, to help your organizations on how to best prepare for emergencies in regards to food safety. So here's a quick overview for today's discussion. We'll start off with a brief intro into our office and what we do, briefly talk about foodborne illnesses, and then go into the main chunk of the presentation, which is how you and your staff can protect your food as much as possible in the event of an emergency. At the end, we'll provide some resources to help you and your staff as you work to prepare for such emergency situations, and finally wrap up with the Q&A for any questions that you may have. So, what is licensure and regulatory services? Or rather, who are we? Well, our office is part of the health department, and we're the ones that licenses and inspects restaurants, swimming pools, congregate living facilities such as assisted living and group homes, and a bunch of other different types of facilities that you see listed here on this slide. So Shantel, Ian, and I are all environmental health specialists, which is a fancy way of saying that we are health inspectors.
Jaime, sorry,
I always like to
quickly
show this picture when I talk about my job. I don't know if anybody has seen the movie Ratatouille, but this picture is actually the background of my work phone.
Just so you know, we can't see your screen.
Yeah.
Can they see the slides?
Can you guys see the slides?
No.
No.
And hello again, just a quick reminder while they're sorting out their slides, if you could please just introduce yourself with your name and organization in the chat so everyone knows who's joining us today, that would be great. Yes.
You good?
Perfect. We're great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I am so sorry.
Not at all. Not at all.
Oh no. Okay. Are we able to see now? Okay.
Yes.
Yes?
Mhm.
Good? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Okay. So back to okay, so yeah. So basically, Shantel, Ian, and I are all environmental health specialists, which is basically a fancy way of saying we are health inspectors. But yeah, this picture is something I like to show a lot whenever we talk about our jobs. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen the movie Ratatouille, but this picture is actually the background of my work phone. And there are some days I actually do make this a base when I do an inspection. But never because I've actually seen a bunch of rats cooking inside of a kitchen. I don't know what I would do in this situation. But moving on. Okay, so now public health emergencies are events that cause harm to someone's health or to the health of a community. What our office does in such an event is we mobilize to assist and provide advice on issues such as food safety and other environmental health related issues under our jurisdiction. For the purposes of today's discussion, we'll keep our presentation tailored to direct guidance and advice on keeping your food safe for your clients. But the main takeaway from this slide is that if you, your staff, or your organization ever need help, please do not hesitate to contact us. We are always here to help and use us as a resource. This is a slide with our contact information. We'll pause here for a second, so feel free to take a picture or a screenshot for your own reference. Alrighty. Okay. Next, we will briefly touch on foodborne illnesses. As most of you know and have likely experienced at one point in your own lives, these are illnesses that are caused by foods that have been contaminated. And this is ultimately what we're aiming to prevent happening to your clients through good food safety practices. I have listed here 4 key contributing factors of contaminated food: poor personal hygiene, food from unsafe sources, inadequate temperatures that include cooking temperatures, hot and cold holding temperatures, and contaminated equipment. In the context of our discussion today with emergencies, particularly ones that result in power outages, inadequate holding temperatures is an important key contributor to pay attention to, because this will apply towards any foods that you keep in refrigerators or freezers that will have lost power during outages. Here I've listed some key interventions to prevent foodborne illnesses. I think the first is very important: the knowledge and practice of food safety practices. And we're hoping everybody here will at least leave this discussion with more knowledge of food safety practices. However, taking this knowledge and applying it or practicing it is equally as important, whether it be training, actual drills, or tabletop exercises. Routinely practicing it will help in the event of an actual emergency. And of course, if there are any further questions you have, even after this presentation and after the Q&A, we'll leave our email addresses at the end so that you have a way to reach us if you have any more questions. And as we all know, getting food poisoning is never fun. The stomach cramping, along with all the other GI symptoms, are always awful. Symptoms can also mimic the flu with flu-like symptoms such as fever, chills, and body aches. Fortunately, most people will recover on their own at home. However, others may develop chronic health issues, or their existing chronic health issues may be exacerbated by the illness. A relatively healthy 65-year-old may recover from a day of vomiting differently than a 65-year-old with chronic kidney disease. And I think this is something important to note, especially considering the communities that your organization serve. And ultimately, we want to do our best to protect those who we serve. And now I'll turn it over to my wonderful colleague, Ian, who will dive into emergencies and food safety tips.
Mic check. Everybody hear me? All right, good. All right. Well, thank you guys for having me here. It's been a pleasure, but I'll just hop right into it. There's many different types of emergencies. Especially in Maryland, we do see a couple of them, whether it be heat waves, like you guys mentioned early in the introduction, tornadoes up north, hurricanes will catch remnants of that, or floods, more so in Ellicott City, for instance. People may remember the flood that may have happened. But the primary thing during those situations is definitely having reliable water, food, and power sources for equipment, and making sure we don't have chemical contaminations during those situations. Also, along with natural disasters, everybody has unexpected emergencies, whether it be sewage overflows. I saw a church that happened to be in the chat, for instance. Overflows happen everywhere. Fires can happen anywhere. Power outages. And then for in my life, a 3-year-old unplugging the refrigerator and then the food is out. But every emergency does look different, but trying to be prepared to the best of your ability is our primary goal for any emergency. So before storms, I think the biggest thing that people forget, that the day-to-day is one thing, but training for every situation and speaking about it and communicating with your staff is definitely first and foremost. Staying alert with some of the natural disasters, for instance, I know Mr. Patrick will be talking more so about that, but staying informed about conditions that may be coming through. Keeping appliances maintained and serviced regularly, making sure that they're holding your temperatures. Pantries such as you guys, I know it's a lot of dry storage, so making sure they're elevated in containers, being maintained, making sure they're not cracked and things of such. But if you do have cold holding for those refrigerators, coolers, ice packs are great ways to maintain your temperatures. And dry ice, and I'll get into a great story about that a little later. Purchasing thermometers, making sure your thermometers actually work. Sometimes after a long time, they're dinged up in the mercury, but it's not mercury anymore. But the dial in there will be stuck. So just making sure you have an accurate thermometer in the facility so that you do know your refrigerators are being maintained. Generators is always good. Churches, like I've already mentioned, or anybody, if you have the funds to do such and you know emergencies are happening, borrowing a generator so you're able to maintain those cold holding temperatures. Making sure shelves and food products are nice and high. In case for like flooding in situations, if water comes through, you're able to maintain some of your products so you can continue to serve. Acquiring a second location. If you know that your church is in the main storm area, flooding, fire area, taking that food and taking it over to another licensed facility if you are licensed, well, if it's dry storage, or if it needs to be maintained cold, from your licensed facility to another licensed facility. And I know times are hard. You get the food where you can with these pantries in different situations, but discarding is okay. I would talk with your insurance companies, making sure you understand the process of documenting that information and hopefully getting reimbursement. And then being prepared for the worst, even though we all want to say, oh, it'll never happen to me. But how many times have you looked up and you're just like, wow, didn't know that could happen today. So like I've said a little bit about cold holding and preparation, we have a different couple groups in here. Dry storage, I know, is very popular with pantries, but not only that, some places do have refrigerators and semi-full kitchens and keeps food cold, and some churches cook for their congregations. But the golden rule is going to be maintaining cold holding, and the magic number is 41. Any food should be kept under 41, and as for freezer, in a frozen solid state. Sorry. Power outages. Keeping your refrigerators closed for as long as possible during your power outage situations. Say you don't know when it's going to come back on. Refrigerators can maintain temperatures for as much as 4 hours, and freezers can keep as long as 48 hours if they remain closed. If you know that you're having that power outage and the power is still on, clustering that food, meaning bunch it together. Food in close contact with other cold food will maintain better. Buying ice for those units will help, and dry ice will help maintain those cold holding temperatures. A little side story here. Dry ice, I'm a millennial, don't tell anybody. So I had another facility I had walked upon, and they had a power outage. I went over to one neighbor. This was another county. One neighbor, they're doing what they're supposed to, but the other neighbor happened to be somebody that sells potentially hazardous food. I'll put it there. Happens to be chicken. They said, yeah, I haven't seen them all day, but the power went out last night. So I kind of grit my teeth and go, oh, great. I'll talk to them soon. Come back a couple hours later, they happen to be there. They're like, yeah, I have my food on dry ice. My alarm starts ringing. I then tell them, yes, can I go in and check the food, even though I'm pretty sure that it was going to be out of temperature. We walk into the refrigerator. I'm feeling okay. A couple seconds later, my head gets fuzzy. I'm not understanding what's going on. I'm feeling like I'm about to pass out. I sprint out. HVAC guy comes in. He said, did you go in there with dry ice? CO2 builds up in those units with dry ice. I could not breathe. I was being asphyxiated. So, a little education in case the millennial isn't enough for you to understand what can happen. But back to it, relocating food to another food service facility that is licensed, making sure you're not taking that food back to your house just to maintain it. And then once power is restored, I know my grandmother would hate me saying this, but just smelling the food, touching it to feel if it's okay isn't good enough. Making sure you have a calibrated thermometer to maintain those temperatures and check those temperatures to make sure that you can use that food. And then in case the power does come on in time, your temperatures are iffy, the golden rule, just toss it, unfortunately. As for flooding, it's a little bit different with the pantry situations. Cans are a popular one that we can hold on to. Plan ahead, make sure those containers are elevated correctly, moving food to higher areas if possible. But after the flood, discarding food that may seem like it got in contact with that flood water, discarding any food or beverages that aren't waterproof. There's a couple of different kinds. So cans, they have an environment that are going to be secure, such as they're called hermetically sealed or retort packages. They're multi-layered, impermeable from water. So those would be your typical ones. But if it's cardboard, think of your mac and cheese, for instance. I'm thinking of my 3-year-old. You should discard those. And then cans that are dented, leaking, starting to swell up should also be discarded as well. For those things that you are trying to keep or you think it has potential, like the hermetically sealed or the retort packaging, making sure you remove those labels if you're thinking about wash, cleaning, and sanitizing, because that outside layer is contaminated. And then wash, rinse, and sanitizing with the appropriate sanitizing agent, whether it be bleach or platinum ammonium, if you're familiar. Air drying it and then relabeling it with the expiration date if you can still read it on that packaging, or using it for immediate use. These foods should be used as soon as possible, but I know in the case of these pantries, you guys have to use it when these events are happening so you can shift it out, or reach out to your different groups and say, hey, we need to get rid of this immediately, and branch out. But most importantly, if you're in question, reach out to us too. We are more than happy to give you an answer. But final takeaways, preparing is key. It doesn't matter what the situation, every emergency is different, but how you prepare is very the same. educating, never tasting your food. I already talked about that. When in doubt, just go ahead and toss it. Cleaning and sanitizing food contact surfaces, even though it may be raised, or if it's a fire, for instance, people forget that single surface items, if that gray water falls from our sprinkler system, that's also contaminated your tables, your cups, your everything. So just keeping that in mind. Temporary hand washing stations, if you're planning to operate still, the number one foodborne illness that happens in the country is neurovirus. That's bare hand contact with food. So a cleaning of your hands in a temporary hand washing station, if you need to, is making sure you have the equipment to do so. And then discarding single service items I just spoke about in potentially hazardous areas and gray water, like I just said. And to operate, you should keep in mind that you have to meet all these things. And if you have to meet water, power, and refrigeration requirements. And if you're iffy on if you do meet those requirements, reach out. We can give you an answer for sure. Here's some wonderful resources that we use as a department, not alongside our COMAR, but it's a great pocket guide, an easy click, and has all the information for multiple different situations, whether it be power outages, floods, fires, or cross-contaminating with chemicals. And a great poster for your facilities, along with speaking about it to the people that you work with, but it's a great thing to put it inside your door, and this comes directly from the USDA. And we are here to help. There's many layers to our department, and there's many licenses, and it can be intimidating, but we are all human. We all understand that it's a process to be able to help the community, and we are all here to help each other. And don't hesitate to use any of the people that are on this slide or reaching out to us at any point.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
pretty I saw the question. I heard the question in the chat for the poster. Anne Marie, will you be sharing these slides as
Yes.
well?
Yes.
Be more than happy to keep these on hand, and then you guys can actually print that out if need be, and the link is in there as well that you guys can use too.
Yes, we will be sure to share all the slides and any.
And also, I didn't even say it out loud. Any questions? Great question, though.
Well, while folks are thinking that all of that great information over for a second, I do have one question for the team, and that is, if an organization were to lose power and they had, significant amounts of food in their cold storage, is there a way that you might be able to connect them or to help us connect them to other licensed organizations?
Typically, we don't give out and branch out that way. I would say the best answer I can give is if you're aware, granted, there's the unexpected ones, the fires, or sewage overflows and such.
Yeah.
If you know of something that's happening and you're in a major area, I would planning for the worst. I would either move it to another church. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but reaching out to a neighboring church, I know they would be more than happy. That's down the street or in another county if that's the way the congregation works. But if it's a licensed facility within the county that it's in, it would be okay to move it to wherever you need it.
And to add to what Ian was referring to, in the state of the emergency, we need to make sure that we keep that community mindset, that village mentality, where we all have to help each other. So when it comes to surrounding licenses, think restaurants, think churches that may.
Oh, sorry, we lost Chantel's voice when Ian turned his mic off.
Oh, sorry.
There you are. Yep.
Yes, we're keeping in mind that we have that community mindset, that village mentality. So we do license restaurants. We license schools. Think about school cafeterias. We also have group homes that are close by, assisted living locations. So like like we were saying, just have that community, that village mindset, know who it is that's serving your community and know who you're serving as well when it comes to possibly even what a 2 or 3 mile radius of you. So keep that in mind.
Those are great ideas for emergency planning purposes. Thank you so much. Again, thanks to the environmental health team for this great information today. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to keep putting them into the chat. Hopefully the team will stay with us as long as they can, but if not, we can get any questions over to them as well. But thanks again so much. And Jaime, I'll ask you to just stop sharing your screen. Wonderful. And we are going to turn things over now to Patrick Campbell, Deputy Chief Operating Officer at DHHS. Many of you are familiar, Patrick does a lot of work supporting the service consolidation hubs. He served on the Food Security Task Force during COVID. So again, just a good friend of our community and happy to have him here with us today. Patrick.
Sure. Thank you so much. So first, I'm just going to connect right from the last presentation. Shantel talked about community. The thing about disasters is people think you can respond to a disaster if you haven't built community before. The work of preparedness has to begin long before, because to say I'm going to go find something in emergency won't happen, because now you're going to be competing for resources and then trying to prove who you are. So realize from these meetings like this with the Food Council, make sure you actually take action from the stuff we say. If anybody knows me, you'll know I generally don't love preparedness presentations because people don't often take action. So I've decided to take a slightly different approach from the standard preparedness thing. I'm not going to tell you to go get a flashlight. If you can't find that information online, you're not going to be able to prepare yourself anyways. So it's not to be obnoxious, but it's to try to challenge you to push yourself to actually prepare. Overwhelmingly, people who show up to preparedness presentations want to be prepared, but often don't get more prepared because of them. So I'm challenging you right now. And in a moment, I'm going to explain to you why I say this. The background pictures and most of the pictures you're going to see are my personal pictures from responses I've done. The difference of being prepared, the difference of taking action makes a significant amount of results when something actually happens. So I put mine as preparedness. My second one is going to be leadership. Leaders need to make decisions. You can make the best plan, but how many plans nobody makes a decision on? You can say we're going to do X, but when something wrong happens, we all have to take leadership and ownership and make decisions for the safety of our clients and our volunteers and our staff. And then community. Preparedness has to, preparedness and responding and making sure we can serve our community takes community. So just to hark back to what Anne Marie said about COVID, COVID was a big project of teamwork. It was government partnering with nonprofits. We were partnering with businesses. We were partnering with federal, state, and local. It's all different levels it takes to actually achieve this, because when things aren't going the way they're supposed to, we need each other's resources because there isn't enough. And during COVID, we were taking catering companies' refrigerators to store deliveries of milk. We were getting companies to deliver food outside their ordinary procedures. And then we had nonprofits who put out a call and thousands of volunteers responded. So what I'm saying is all of us have to do this together. The one big picture, if you're wondering what all the disaster is, that was from a deployment I did in Virginia from a tornado. It was actually so devastating that for us to figure out how many homes there was, we had to take Google map shots to try to figure out how many actual homes were possibly there so we could do damage assessment. So being prepared, for some reason my slide does not want to advance, there it goes. So just so you know who I am, this is a brief kind of overview. I'm not going to go into too much detail because you're going to get the slides, and Anne-Marie already gave you a little bit of introduction. But part of this is simply to let you know, this is why I have the confidence to speak to you in a very direct and honest way, because I've seen when it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because, we think we can get prepared after it happens. It doesn't work because often we think we can leave it in the hands of just a few of our staff members, when actually safety and preparedness means getting everybody on your team. That means doing safety briefs with your volunteers. That means doing trainings. That means engaging your children, even in your own home fire plans. But when we leave it in just a few people's hands, we're assuming that they're good at responding for disasters also. And the idea is more people who understand why we make decisions, the reason we're making decisions, means that if we have to cancel a food event, Everybody's on board and not fighting you about it. My two most recent big deployments, I did deploy to DC for January 6th through the inauguration, and then I also recently deployed for the air collision in the Potomac. So I've had a lot of opportunity to observe a lot of different people and be in a lot of different roles. COVID was one of those events that, people sometimes who I would say who were good during kind of peacetime government, some people weren't good at disaster. And so also as you're evaluating your own preparedness structure is figuring out who on your team is actually good at it. Because the person who might be good at being the executive director, running the budget, doing the volunteers might not be the best emergency person. And then here's just a few pictures from my public safety career, just to show you other things Patrick's done. And also see, I once looked like I was a baby and I wore a uniform. All right, so real quickly, I'm going to show you a video. All right, let me jump to that. And of course, I got to find where I put it. There it is. And make sure the sound is on. All right, and let me know if you have any issues with the sound. Are you guys hearing it? Thumbs up or thumbs
No,
down?
not hearing it, Patrick.
All right. Let's give it one more go here. It's interesting. I don't know why it's not playing. How about now?
No.
Now I'm going to give it one more try and then we'll.
Okay.
Fortunately, these days I'm more used to using Teams. I think I got to go back to share and then make sure I put share audio.
Maybe, yeah.
There it is. That's what I missed. There was one button in there. There always is. All right, so there's a little humorous video, but also to show you something that's real. And I did this actually in a previous job. Ever seen it?
See that ass? What are you guys doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on.
You wouldn't row your boat down the street, so why would you drive your car into moving water? This hurricane season, remember one phrase: turn around, don't drown. For more tips to keep you safe, visit redcross.org.
All right, as you can see very intentionally, that video is supposed to be silly, but also truthful. And so I remember when we created that video, we were sitting there saying, we just came back from a flood where a bunch of people had driven through moving water. And so you sit there and say and ask yourself, are disasters natural, man-made, or are they people initiated? And how often are we seeing disasters that were 100% preventable because either we chose to build in areas that were unsafe or we made decisions that were poor? These are a big things to consider. So in the case of this, I remember we talked about this video and we were sitting there at the river that was flooded and we're saying, I don't understand why people are doing this. I wouldn't ride my bike to the water. And then that's what led to us creating that video. But even that very recent storm we had in Montgomery County just a few weeks ago that created flooding in the same areas it almost always creates flooding. And yet we had numerous vehicles drive through. And this is something that, generally speaking, right, happens often. It is it is within our top 5 type of emergencies, which is temporary flooding like that. And yet we're often seeing bad decisions. And so that's why it's really important with your teams to make good decisions in terms of help them educate them, talk about scenarios. We had an incident where one of our vehicles was delivering diapers. It was a partner, and it actually flipped over because it was driving in high winds, and the vehicle wasn't weighed down because it was diapers. And so there's a lot of things we have to consider is that we're always sometimes focused on these big events, Katrina, these gigantic, things we can't even conceive or process. They're so big. But we have to remember for us on a day to day, and sometimes what are actually the biggest killers, like heat emergencies, like cold emergencies, we also have to prepare people for that. We can't assume our staff are aware of what it means to be outside at a food site in 103-degree temperature. Are we taking breaks? Are we modeling good behavior? And so we have to be realistic, and we can't just say, hey, practice preparedness. We want to make sure when we're meeting with our volunteers, we're meeting with our teams, we're being very realistic. Hey, if there was a fire, let's practice it. Let me show you which way we would exit. Hey, it's a hot day. We're going to take a break. We're going to give everybody a water supply, or we're going to move our event earlier. We have to make sure we're very clear of who, what, when, where, and why. People need to understand the why. The turnaround, don't drown. And this is actually the flooded picture is from our county. Every incident, all of a sudden our fire department's, rescuing 40, 50, 60 cars in pretty much 100 preventable incidents. And so one of the big thought processes nowadays in the world of emergency management is there are no natural disasters. They're all man-made. And I say that again because it's because of where we're choosing to build. It's how we're choosing to build. In the United States, we are concentrating our population on a small sliver of land along the ocean, which puts us on the East Coast for us right into hurricane zones, tropical storm. We are building designs. We're using building designs that aren't necessarily ideal to deal with our types of incidents, and we're building homes in increasingly in more flooded areas. And some people say, well, is it global warming? Is it man-made? This is what I can tell you. Storms are getting worse. Weather is getting worse. If we want to debate if it's man-made or not, go ahead. But the fact is, it has been true for the last bunch of years, and we have to do something about it. And we have to figure out how we reduce it. And we have to reduce it from a lot of reasons, because more people that are affected, it means it's harder to help everybody who absolutely needs our help. Because we have to realize there's a lot of us who actually can help ourselves. And if we put ourselves in a position where we can no longer help ourselves, it means fire, police, and rescue resources are now having to focus on everybody, and they can't just get the people who couldn't evacuate. So we have to do our best. When we're doing our part, it means we're also helping other people. So weather safety. So the first part I'm focusing on is, outdoor events. Many of you do these grab and go events. This puts thousands of people in a small and confined space. They're also in a position in place where sometimes there's so many vehicles that until the vehicles in the back were to back out, all the cars in the front are now stuck, right? And the roads are condensed. They are jammed. And so we have to realize that we are doing big events. And I know sometimes people get excited. Hey, we serve 3,000 people. I'd rather see 5 events of like 500 people than one big event of 3,000 from safety, because the things that are going to be are high risk is going to be the road safety part. When cars back up into roads, they create accidents. Still one of the biggest killers in the United States. If there has to be an evacuation, are you skilled in moving 3,000 vehicles in under 10 minutes? And the answer is probably no. You might be skilled at moving them slowly through a grab and go line, but if we had to do an evacuation. So making sure we're doing safety plans. Safety plans also include in that grab and go event. What would you do with your volunteers? If you're doing it, say at the soccerplex or something like that, and you don't have access to move volunteers inside, what is your plan to evacuate? Do you cancel or pause an event? And how do you communicate that to the public? And that's one of the greater challenges of these grab and go, where we don't know anything about our clients. There's no way to send out messaging to say, hey, we've had to cancel it, move it. But I will promise you, sometimes if the weather's going to be bad, it is better to reschedule, even though I know all the headaches it causes you. I know all the work that goes into an event. But if we're getting warnings and watches coming in, particularly when you hear that word warning versus watch, warning, when the weather service says warning, that means bad. That means most likely going to happen. It might shift to the left and it might miss you just a little bit. But we also have to remember we need to pay attention to the broader weather in our county and our region. The reason why that matters is because your people aren't just coming from within a mile of your event. If we know Down County might be getting hit by really big, or some other part of the county, or there's risk in other places, you need to decide, does it make sense for me to put people on the road? Even me, as a disaster responder, I have to make a decision in the middle of a weather event is, do I deploy my people now? Or do I wait until the weather conditions are improved so I make sure I'm protecting and caring for their safety? Communicate clearly. It's good to have signs that say event is canceled, and you could put somewhere where you might be able to draw on with a marker to say this is the replacement date. But I wouldn't schedule a big event unless I already had in mind an alternative date and plan just in case. Especially when we're looking at our seasons like June through basically October, which is our tropical storm season. Those are the periods where we're most likely to see severe weather. And when I say severe weather, that means wind, that means thunderstorms, that means heavy rain. When we start seeing 2 or more inches in a short period of time, we can promise we're going to have flooding in Maryland. A lot of times it is temporary. But the thing about flooding is often we're focused on flooding in big rivers. But if you ever notice the flooding in Montgomery County, it's always the little streams and the little creeks that flood first. The big rivers don't flood for days later. And in our region, we generally have riparian regions all around our big rivers. But little streams, just a couple inches of water quickly flooding into them could flood their banks and flood a home. That's where we often see the majority of the types of flooding in this county. Heat, cold, and air quality. Obviously, when we're looking at heat and cold, there are populations that are at greater risk. Obviously homeless populations because they're outside for prolonged periods of time, seniors, people on certain types of medication. But we also have to make sure not only are we planning for our clients, but also our volunteers. And remember, even with the grab and go events, it's great to, even if you can't switch entirely to a choice pantry, it's great to consider having an opportunity for folks who might be heat sensitive, like seniors. We have to remember not all of our population has a car with a great functioning air conditioner. So sitting in a hot car on a 105-degree day in a barely functioning vehicle could put both them and their children. And we also have to remember many of our at-risk populations, they don't have the ability to say, hey, I got to go pick up food, wait in a line for an hour or two, and have somebody watch their children. They might have their baby in the back. And so we have to make sure we're considering where our vulnerable population is. And if we have limited capabilities to do a pantry, focus on those vulnerable populations first. Because we know one of the things about the grab and go model, right? It allows us to serve many people. It allows us to expand well beyond our building's capacity, but it's not always the best option for every client. And it actually does put some clients at risk during these severe weather periods. Train staff and volunteers. I know that's hard to say because, right, in some cases we have new volunteers all the time, but you should have a safety brief involved every day. A safety brief is, hey, if X happens, this is where you should go. If we have to evacuate, this is what we're going to do. And you can actually create, and this is what we do on disasters, is we have one safety brief for an incident. We review it every incident, but you don't have to rewrite it every time. The only thing you'd have to add every time is the weather for the day. They're usually about a page, and you can actually print them out too. But you should also make sure that you read it and talk it to folks, because if you hand a lot of folks a piece of paper, what do? They fold it up and it goes in their pocket and they never look at it. They also, that whoever's in charge should be the one reading it to them because you're the one in charge. So if the decision comes, it needs to be clear on who the authority is on situations. What you'll see, you can come with 400 years of FEMA experience and somebody will argue with you, but you have to remind people you are the executive and you are the one who's responsible for the incident. When we look at safety issues, because I was like, let me look at what are our risks. And one of the important parts of being prepared is also understanding what are the day-to-day safety risks. So I did some research. The most common issues for any type of food distribution is traffic and pedestrian safety. There's two ways we eliminate them. One, we try not to have gigantic unannounced events that we can't control who's coming. Like just having, hey, we put up signs that people start showing up. That has been our model for a long time. But research overwhelmingly says it is not the best model. It does not provide food security because somebody can't guarantee they're going to make it to the beginning of the line before food runs out, but also it puts our folks at risk. So if you have any traffic that's backing up into the roads, you really need to look at your model and see, is there an alternative way to get folks out of there? We should also make sure as much as possible, volunteers and guests to our food distribution should never be crossing the path of vehicles. Let me say that again, they should never be crossing the path of vehicles. You need to design your layout because people aren't paying attention. If they're there for a long time, they're bored, people play on their phone, right? For the first time in decades, we've actually seen both pedestrian and vehicle deaths go up. And it's actually, the interesting part is our vehicles and our cars and our roads are better engineered than they've ever been for safety. And for the first time in a long time, our numbers are going up, and it has to do with inattentive drivers. And we have to realize the risk of a vehicle driving through a crowd is enormous. We don't have the ability to put bollards and things in way. But what you should consider too is anywhere vehicles are faced head on. So for example, if you had a place where they're turning in and now that vehicle is pointing directly at people, your volunteers, and yeah, you have cones there, that's a great place to put a vehicle. So anytime that the head of a car is pointing at people directly is a time we should be thinking about how we put a barrier between that. And the idea of that is if somebody's not paying attention, then there's a vehicle there that's going to stop them. Traffic vest should definitely be part of your plan, and we should highly focus on the times of days that we're doing our events. Daytime, light is out. If you are doing it at night, people need to have lights or some way for them to be high visibility, and we should have folks who are designated safety officers on our sites, people who are looking for problems and mistakes. Because as volunteers and people get tired, that's when mistakes happen. We've already talked about heat, cold, and weather, but one thing too with both the heat and cold, make sure if it is really cold, you have ways to rotate people inside to warm up. If it's really hot, make sure we have ways to rotate people inside and also provide them hydration. Also, in your safety plans, you should be briefing them on that. Hey, it's cold, you should have X. If it's hot, we should be doing X. There are a lot of materials online to actually provide that brief. You can literally type what to do in a FEMA heat emergency, and material comes up. Lifting and ergonomics, don't assume just because somebody has lived a long time that they're good at lifting heavy objects, right? A lot of us might be office workers now. And so going over, hey, we're going to move food. Let's talk about safety procedures on lifting, how to properly lift something, because we want to prevent these injuries. A back injury could be so significant that it could actually affect them for years. And so making sure we're paying attention to these, especially if we're using youth volunteers. This is an opportunity to show them lifelong positive behaviors and habits that can benefit them. Crowd control and conflict management. We have seen an increase of upset people showing up at events. There are various trainings that are both online, but also you need to talk to folks. How do we deal with people high conflict? And you have to figure out, can you incorporate that training in your volunteer training, even if it's very basic? I'll give you a hint. When somebody's really arguing with you, yelling back doesn't help. So often it increases the escalation. And then also being clear about your expectations for people who visit your sites. People who present negative behavior you are allowed to present them a warning. You can tell them, hey, if you're going to abuse our volunteers or staff, we're not going to ask you not to participate here, right? You can be polite. It is okay to put a line in the sand and be clear. Even me as a government worker can actually do that. We can actually give a behavioral directive. So we have to be cautious. We also have to make sure we never de-escalate. And the last thing, and I'm not going to go into it too far, but is that food safety and sanitation. We just have to remember that often because of your food distributions being outside, sometimes your food is moving 2 or 3 times. So how long has that food now been outside? And then deciding if I'm going to do a grab and go in hot weather, maybe I adjust my menu for the summertime, maybe I adjust my menu for the wintertime and say it may be great to offer these things, but if you can only do a remote one, having very vulnerable food like salad sitting on a tarmac at 105 degrees even for 30 minutes will destroy it. So just keep that in mind is that, adapt. Even though we want to be that perfect food provider that gets them all the things they need, we have to pay attention to the conditions and make adjustments. Improving traffic safety of food distributions. So this is actually one of my sites during COVID. You'll see I have cones. All my folks are lit up with bright colored vests, and we did it during daytime hours only. And as soon as it gets dark, it ends. And we always had clear places where they had to stop, and we had tight controls. But yeah, clear signs, exits. I know these things can be expensive, but if you have to, you could do hand-drawn signs, right? We can get a poster board and we can get bright colored material. Make sure you have volunteers that focus. We call them flow. That's the model that we use in public health. But you can use, once you just focus on the traffic flow of vehicles, their job isn't food distribution, but make sure you have clearly defined roles. The people who put the food in the vehicles should be separate from the ones who are controlling traffic. Because I have witnessed so many times on events where people get distracted. All of a sudden, they're chasing after a vehicle because the trunk is still open. Like, we need to be clear about duties, roles, and responsibility. I even went to one food distribution during COVID that was so poorly managed that it actually shut down an entire neighborhood because the cars and vehicles backed up. And then the intersections were clogged full of people and nobody wanting to negotiate. So all of a sudden, nothing could move. And then we started getting community complaints. So we have to realize, along with being safe, we're also neighboring with these communities. These communities want to be gentle, but if you're going to shut down their neighborhood because of bad management, it's a real concern because now they can't get out. They can't get fire vehicles in or EMT vehicles. So also remember we're in a place. Another thing to highlight too is managing schedules, right? Even if you are doing a grab and go, you can still schedule folks. So you can give people 10 to 12 windows and then 12 to 2 windows to space it out if you have a lot. Yes, people aren't always going to listen. Other habits that you want to try to stop people from doing is showing up early, right? We've seen some events where people show up 2 or 3 hours. early, and because of it, before your event is even begun, they're backing up. You need to knock them off your property. Like, you don't want to enforce or encourage that behavior, but that's why signups help. Signups say, yes, you're going to get food today. And yes, we're going to control the amount of people coming to our property because we want you to be safe. And then prepare for emergencies. What happens on your incident? Somebody got hurt, but because you've backed up traffic so poorly that now emergency vehicles can't get in, you can't move your own vehicles, right? We have to make sure we're not trying to figure out how we move everybody on our property in a way that now we can't get off our property or we can't get emergency vehicles on our property. So think about those flows. And that's why I say managing schedules. Do not tell everybody to show up at 9. None of you can serve everybody at 9, right? So why are we saying show up at 9 when we have a 4-hour window? So real quick, I do want to look at a couple case studies. So one of the things I highlighted for you is leadership. If you are on this call, whether you're an executive director, a program manager of your organization, a stellar volunteer, you are a leader, and I need you to be a leader. If many of you are familiar with, Hurricane Katrina, I think we just passed the anniversary for it. But within there, and I actually recently turned this into a movie, but I've been using this example for years, is within all that, there was actually a hospital that actually got surrounded by water. And because of poor communication and poor leadership, there was a lot of things that they didn't know. So for example, the hospital thought the whole hospital was without power, but the children's wing was fully powered and had an operating generator. They thought that they had no water, no supplies, and no food. They just didn't know where it was on that side of the building. They thought, because they were getting a lot of misinformation, and in emergencies, we get a lot of misinformation. They thought there was roving bands of gangs. There were no roving bands of gangs. And so making sure we're being critical of when we make a decision, being aware of our resources, making sure that people know who's in charge, and making sure those people who are in charge are the best people to be in charge in an emergency. And I say that again, just because you're the boss doesn't mean you're the best emergency guy or gal. I've seen one of the best emergency managers I ever saw in my deployment career was a school teacher who was a special education teacher. And everybody's going to say fire chief and all these things. But she stayed calm and cool no matter what people threw at her. And so making sure you're picking that right person. And it might be good to have somebody separate of the event leader, because that person's going to be focused on the operational end of it. Now you have a crisis person who's paying attention. Somebody's checking the weather. But so many times in the case of this Memorial Hospital, people actually lost their lives because they took too long to make the decision to evacuate. They didn't even realize they had supplies and equipment within their facility, and they didn't realize one whole wing of their building was fully powered and air conditioned. They just knew that they lost power. They lost the generator in the building. And because of that, what happens is leaders actually start to become a victim of the incident itself. And that's what you have to remember about a big incident like a flood, a severe weather event. The leaders themselves are impacted, both emotionally and physically. Whereas often when we think of like the house fire and there's a fireman responding, the chance of them being a victim in it are very low. But in the case of these big incidents, we might be affected. And that's why having a leadership team, having a safety group, having people whose focus solely is is the safety of our residents. And that's why one thing I recommend for nonprofits and churches is to have a public safety committee. So that way, 1 or 2 of those members are at every event and they're always focused on how to be safe. So I did do a picture of my puppy to wake you guys up, plus he's cute. But I also want you to think is, why leaders struggle to decide in a crisis. Information overload, uncertainty. It's a big deal to cancel a food event. Does anybody not think it's a big deal to tell a whole bunch of people that you planned for this, you need this food, and now I have to cancel? So it's real, right? It's hard to say, I'm just going to cancel it. And I don't say that as to be flippant, but we also have to say, what is the greatest crisis? 10% chance of rain, maybe you take the risk. But you have something that a warning for foul weather, severe weather, maybe you reschedule. But overload of information, I've seen some people on deployments and they'll check the weather 300 times. And I'll be like, you do realize the weather service actually only updates the data 3 times a day, other than the radar map. So I always told people when I was a planning section chief on hurricanes, I checked the weather 3 times a day, because you got to make sure that you're not throwing so much information that now you're just creating paralysis in your mind. So you just keep thinking about it, then you do nothing. Time pressure. The sooner you can make the decision is the easier it is to cancel. So canceling 10 minutes before versus 3 hours before is a big difference, right? It gives you more tools, more time to decide what to do. Let the high stakes and consequences for you guys, it's big, right? We're dealing with a population that needs us, right? People aren't coming to us because it's nice to get our food, right? They're coming to us because they need the food and they need the services you provide. So I know that is one of the reasons you're pushing through in danger is because of that. And we're trying to figure out how we squeeze more people. And what I'm saying is we got to be more thoughtful. And when these big and more dangerous event comes, we're prepared. And one way we can deal with that is like, hey, you got severe weather coming in next week. Say, hey, if this event is canceled, here's the rain date.
Hello?
Will everybody listen? No. Um, and then let's see, stress and cognitive bias. So cognitive bias in the case of this type of stuff is, well, the last 10 times this weather came, nothing happened. And that is a common thing that stops people from making good decisions. And it is real. And I promise you, having both been a camp director where I've had to cancel events to being an emergency manager, is whether you make the right or the wrong decision. But if you canceled it because and nothing happens, people are going to judge you. I promise you, if you make the right decision and the storm happens, people will judge you. So that's what can't be. Your point and your philosophy and ethic has to be, I'm doing it for the people's safety. And I'm basing this information at the best information I had at the time. And that's all you can do. So just something to keep in mind. There are tools and decision tools. So you could make a model that says, hey, a warning with a 90% chance for our area comes up, we cancel automatically. And that's one of the ways you can actually create, and I did put, there's the FEMA decision models, ODA loops. What that is actually doing is about coming up with some framework where there's things that automatically decide for you. So you lower the amount of decisions you have to make. And I probably, and like I said, you're going to get these slides. I put those things down there so you can look them up, but they do call them decision models. And there's crisis tool models, but the big part about it is how do you take decisions out of your own hands? Because we as people are imperfect, right? We make bad decisions. We're tired. We got other things going on in our lives. So making sure we're having some of these models. And every person who's your event lead should have a handbook for that day. It should have the decision tools and what your guidelines on. That person should also have the safety brief in there every day. And then every day before an event begins, a safety talk and say, hey, is there anything that we're concerned about safety-wise before we start this event? And listen to people talk. You're going to get some crazy stuff. You're going to get some good stuff. I promise you, because I work with the public all the time. People are going to say stuff that there's nothing you can do about. But then we have to figure out, is there something we can do to adjust it? Or maybe today people have to change positions. The person who normally does your check-ins might be somebody who's a little bit older, a little bit more heat sensitive, and they say they're worried about that. Maybe you can find a position that day that's more suitable for them, right? We adapt, we grow, but we also listen. Another case study for you too. So if you see this picture here, the big fancy building that looks almost like a K, that's a hospital. And where I have the building marked, that was a senior center. So this area got hit by Hurricane Irma, and it really wasn't actually a bad event. A couple trees down, some power outage. But 99% of the community in this picture actually has power. But the building itself had some damage. Its generator wasn't operating. They took days to make a good decision. So their heating and cooling went down. They have seniors in their building. There's a hospital across the street. 911's working. Roads are functioning. Well, the temperature in the building eventually got over 100 degrees with seniors and eventually led to the death of 12 people. And the reason I bring this up is there are no resource reasons why they couldn't get help. They never called 911. They could have walked everybody over to the hospital. That's how close the hospital is. Like when I put this on map, I was like, what? Like, sometimes they say, well, it's close. It's 3 miles away. You can't walk maybe seniors in 3 miles in summer in Florida, but it's right there. And there were no resource shortages for the emergency management in that region. And so often, and this is why I refuse to call disasters natural. Those were 100% man-made disaster. They could have gotten help. 12 people died because of extreme indoor heat, not outdoor heat, indoor heat. They had lights, their phones worked, their cell phones worked, 911 worked, and there's a hospital right there. And so that's what I mean about leadership. Leadership could have said, you know what? It isn't right here. I know we're not going to look great because we have to shut down our facility and our generator should be working right, but it's not. And we thought our generator worked on our HVAC system, but we need help. And that's what you have to do too. If you get overwhelmed, the incident gets bigger than you need to ask for help. If you think that your ability to run a big event is clear, but you've never done it, practice on a small event, right? Building up these skill sets and learning how to run these events does take time. And we have to remember there are veterans in our food community that have done it. And there's a lot of us who haven't done it. And so build your skills up. There are trainings out there for special events and things like that. But the truth is, beyond those trainings, you have to have done it. And so we don't want to just assume because you have a good heart and you have good intentions that you should run and do it. So just to keep those things in mind, remember the best plan only works if you use it and you train your people. My big pet peeve as an emergency manager is writing an emergency plan that collects dust. We have to constantly be looking at it. We have to constantly be challenging it. And then we have to constantly improve it. We do an event and our emergency plan was terrible, right? Because you did it with the best of your ability, but you learned some things. Then you improve that plan. Providing safety briefs, making sure your folks and people are aware are important, and making sure that you empower people. The best emergency plans are not based on where there's one leader. I think one of the biggest false things I see of incident command is people think it's just a chief telling everybody what to do. And that is actually false, both for the military, both for fire, both for police. There's an active thing where there are ways you are supposed to talk and speak up. Anything safety, anything danger, anything that's going to get people hurt, everybody needs to be empowered. We should be empowering our volunteers to be the #1 advocate for our clients, and we do that through both providing them food, but also safety. So just remember that we don't want a top-down model where nobody else is talking, but we do need leaders who make decisions. All right, so I am open for questions. And Anne-Marie, you know this cup because we talked about it last time.
I just want to say before anyone jumps in, that was incredible, Patrick, and I really appreciate what you've pulled together for us here today. And I have lots of notes that I have taken down and lots of resources that I'm wondering if our providers have or need assistance with. But please, if there's anyone who has a question for Patrick, feel free to raise your hand. Come off mute. Oh, I see Melissa. There you are.
Hi. Do you have any guidance about if ice is spotted in the area? What should be done if there's like a large food distribution?
Unfortunately, I'm not prepared for that type of question. The truth is, and the biggest thing I always tell people is there's probably more bad information on what to do on that than there is good information. Because the one thing is, and I'll say this every time, is realize that ICE is like any other law enforcement. If you have an open and public event, in theory, they have access just like everybody else. So what you decide to do, you need to decide with your own organization. But I do recommend if you do want to talk to organizations that specialize in that, because I hate to say it, but this is a legal question more than it is a emergency management question, and has negative consequences if you do the wrong thing.
And we have shared a number of resources that have come our way in the past with this group around, know your rights trainings. We know that many organizations have been doing those on their own, but I think Patrick is right, is that this really is part of your comprehensive planning, and there are going to be different things that you want to have in a handbook for different scenarios. And like I said, we certainly have those resources that we've shared before. But I think also, we'll just have to kind of keep watching the current climate and see, what new resources are produced, as things happen in times past, and we'll be sure to share those as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Beta, while we're still looking for other questions, did you have, oh, I'm sorry, did Beta get back on? Go ahead. Oh, there she is. Beta, were we able to do a quick poll? Okay. We're gonna run a quick poll just to get a sense of where folks are in terms of these resources. So we're just gonna ask briefly if you have an emergency action plan in place in regards to food safety, if you have a plan to keep your employees and volunteers and clients safe. And then we're also curious to know, along with what Patrick was saying, have you put these plans into action in the past, right? Because that kind of gives us a little bit of a sense of, how are you looking at them? Did you get a sense of if they worked for you or not? So see some folks answering there, which is great. Also, if your organization has a plan in place that you are pretty proud of and feel like others might be able to benefit, happy to have anyone come off mute and share a little bit about that, or include some information in the chat. And, if there's anyone willing to share theirs, we're happy to kind of, make those available to, all of our food assistance providers as well, if you are just in the beginning stages yourself of getting a plan together.
Yeah, and while they're answering too, in the when you get my PowerPoint, if you go down on this, on the last one, I put an interview I did with Jaime Raskin too, to talk further about our region and disaster preparedness.
Yep.
There is not, in fact, a perfect plan. And your plan, when you're thinking about development, shouldn't be super concise, because we typically work on guidelines, so we're flexible, because storms and disasters hit differently. And maybe something for us to consider in the future, and I'm offering my services, is maybe we do create a workshop that's half day that I can help support, because I know there's a lot of smaller nonprofits and you wouldn't be able to afford somebody, but I can at least give you a workshop to help you work your way through it.
I think that sounds incredible, Patrick, and I really appreciate you offering. I'm seeing in the, you know what, I'm going to end the poll, and let's see if I can share the results. It looks like we're kind of a 50-50, or 55, 45, 60-40 on a lot of these questions. So I think, it seems like there are folks out there who have some things, at the ready, and other folks that may certainly want to be, connecting with these resources and thinking through what type of plan would work best for their organization. So again, if you are a provider that has a plan that you feel is working for you, you've had the opportunity to try it out and test it, and you wouldn't mind sharing it, we're happy to take it. We're also happy to take your questions thinking about Patrick's offer. What is it about your distribution? Maybe there's a way that you do it, a type of distribution model that you think may require a little more thought as to how to ensure safety. And so we're happy to collect that information as well to kind of help prepare the best resources we can think of. Just going to check the chat for some questions there. Just lots of thanks for for all of your work. I will say something about the weather that struck me. I don't know about anyone else. I have noticed our reliance on apps doesn't always do us very well in the weather sphere. I feel there are times I check my weather app when it's pouring outside and it tells me that it's clear. And so I think, we need to be thinking about, are we using the most reliable resources when, other people's safety is at stake, and not just, we're thinking about what temperature to prepare for outside for ourselves. And I'm also thinking, I'm a dietitian, and when I was doing my training in food service, every shift started with a very quick learning meeting at the start, about 5 or 10 minutes, where someone would cover a topic related to food safety or safety in the kitchen. And, just very quickly gave a briefing, kind of check that people knew about that. And so there are ways about, that you can continue to incorporate, ongoing training with your volunteers, with your staff, to keep these ideas fresh in their mind as you're going about your services. Oh, Patrick, okay, thanks. The Red Cross Emergency app. That's great. That's great. Any other questions for Patrick, or about any of the information we've covered so far? All right. Well, again, thank you so much. We will be sure to share all of those slides. We did ask, we have 2 more agenda items today. I know Catherine Nardi from OFSR has just joined us, and she had a few updates to share. We did also reach out, Bita, I'm not sure if you heard back or if he was able to join us, but Officer Dixon from the Up County area was perhaps going to join to share a little bit about community. Nope, he hasn't today. Okay. We will keep that in mind just in the future. We did try to reach out to have someone speak on community policing because we think that's another important piece in your emergency management plan is do you have a relationship with your local police precinct? If you are doing distributions, you know, do you have connections there? Oh, Marco, I see you contributing in the chat. Feel free to, not to put you on the spot, but feel free to come off mic because you were the one who shared that relationship with us. If there's anything you want to say quickly about just what you were able to do with that connection.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Yeah, and I think Patrick gave a great presentation, but I'll just say like having a relationship, especially in emergency planning with the local police department, whether it's a city or the county, wherever your pantry resides, is extremely helpful and beneficial. We've been extremely thankful with the community officers and the patrol officers that have been assigned, whether it's traffic control or anything like that, with the hub here. And I always recommend if you know you're going to plan a large scale distribution to make sure you start planning it way in advance. Just because, like Patrick said, you don't know what's going to happen. You want to make sure everybody's safe. I don't know if he was referring to us, but we are one of the large distributions at the Maryland Soccerplex in Boyd's. About 800 people come through there in 2 hours, and we had our first call last week with the Park Police and Montgomery County Police. So it's a lot of planning. You want to make sure everybody's safe. You want to make sure everybody has a job, traffic vests. So hopefully he's able to make it to another call. If not, I'm happy to share resources. Every district has a community officer as well as other officers dedicated to either assisting community organizations like that. So I'm happy to share that information as well, Anne Marie.
Thanks so much. Yeah, we will definitely try to have them on a call in the future. Mark, I see your hand.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Edwards. I'm the safety officer for Nourishing Bethesda. And I just want to, support what's been said about the importance of a community, police presence and what you do. We're very lucky because our next station is literally, a couple of yards away from where we're located. It really behooves you just to reach out to folks and actually talk to them about this in detail. We were able to do that in the development of our plan and actually working through scenarios and appropriate actions can be then built right into your plan. So I encourage you to do that. The community service folks are great, and they will help you work through a hierarchy of actions that you can take, and it's really beneficial. So please do. They're there to help, and they want to help. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's wonderful that you were able to connect. And like I said, we certainly hope that we can connect, either in another food security call or even in our regional convening spaces and possibly get some folks, that are exactly connected to those regions so you can form those relationships if you haven't already. Any other questions or comments before I ask Catherine to join us with her announcements? All right, Catherine, if you are ready, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Anne Marie. I'm having some issues with my camera today, so I am here, but Zoom is telling me it can't detect a camera, so apologies for that. But thank you so much for including me on the call today. I am excited to share a couple of quick updates from the OFSR team, and I believe my colleague Deanna is on as well. But we are in the midst of still accepting applications through our Community Food Assistance Grant Program through the end of this week. The application will close this Friday, September 12th, and there will not be extensions for missing or incomplete applications. So please make sure, especially if you are receiving funds through the FY25 Community Food Assistance Grant Program, that you submit your application as soon as possible. We do not have other mechanisms at this point for providing the same form of funding to community food assistance organizations. So if you need that funding renewed, that you relied on through the past year or so for your food assistance operations, this is the way to request that funding again. And you'll see in the application that this time around, it will actually be a renewable grant. So pending successful performance outcomes and compliance with the terms of the grant agreement, we hope to be able to renew these grant awards next October so that you don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of applying again. So hopefully you'll just, apply this once and get approved for funding through this round of the grant program and can rely on that funding for another year as long as you're compliant with the expectations of the grant program. I'll also note that we recently announced our FY26 school-based food assistance grantees. We funded 13 organizations to support at 99 unique school sites across Montgomery County Public Schools. Many of those grantees are on the call today. You can also find the information on our website regarding the grantees. And if there are schools that your organization is serving and you are not a grantee of that grant program, please let Anne-Marie or myself know as soon as possible, just because we are actively tracking the school-based food assistance interventions across Montgomery County Public Schools and working to support organizations doing that work so we can avoid duplication of efforts and make things a little bit easier for school staff, while also ensuring that there's equitable distribution of resources across the county's schools. Other updates for you all from our team, we are going to be sharing the data outcomes of our FY25 school-based food assistance grant program and our FY24 resident and community gardening grant program shortly. Those will be available through our social media, on our website, and also in our next newsletter, which will be coming in the next month or so. If you're not already signed up for our newsletter, you can do that through our website. That's a great way to get information and updates on OFSR's work. Our data tracking team is really actively involved in reviewing reports for accuracy and compliance. And at the end of each grant cycle, we put together a data summary to show the impact of that grant program. So keep an eye out for that as well. We're excited to share how many households, how many pounds of food, how many local farms have been engaged in our work over the past year or so through these different grant programs. So that will be coming soon. And other than that, I know that the Food Council team is in touch with organizations that are funded through our CFA grant program, but are not currently posting on the county's food resources calendar. If that applies to you, or if you're not sure if your organization has updated your postings on the county's food resources calendar recently, you can connect with Anne-Marie or Bita or myself. But as the need for food assistance continues to grow in the county, we want to make sure that that information is accessible as possible to residents. So please make sure that you're keeping up with your calendar postings. Please make sure that you are keeping track of your meeting attendance to this meeting and any other meetings hosted by the Food Council, as that is a component of compliance with the FY25 Community Food Assistance Grant. And we do have a new slate of nutrition benefits outreach grantees that I know have been shared already by the Food Council, but your organization is interested in working with a community-based organization that is designated by the state to supply your team, your community members with SNAP application assistance and other benefits application assistance. You can find that on our website. You can reach out to Allison Schnitzer. You can reach out to Anne-Marie or myself, but want to make sure that we're connecting the dots all the way around and giving folks access to the services they are eligible for. I think that is all from me, but thanks again for having me. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. Any questions for Catherine before move along a little bit? Okay. I'll just share, and I apologize for to those for whom it's a little bit broken record, but just a reminder for our community food assistance grantees that we do have 2 trainings coming later this month after the CFA grant application is due. So being mindful of those dates on the 16th around for fundraising 101 and on September 29th for working with foundations. So if you are a community food assistance grantee and need assistance with registering for those calls or haven't heard about it, feel free to reach out to me and I will make sure that you are connected. And also another reminder that this is a great opportunity if you have not already to do your follow-up consultation with Justin Pollock of Org Forward. You do have until the end of this month to schedule time with him. And he's happy to work on any questions you want to work on relating to grant writing or visioning. So again, if you are a CFA grantee and have not yet taken advantage of his time, please go to that calendar link and get something on the books today. We want to make sure you can use that resource. That all being said, future Food Council meetings coming up. We do have our food system advocacy call happening on Wednesday, September 24th. We will share that out. And as far as attendance at meetings over the next few weeks, we will be sharing with you what we had in our tracking for the meetings that you've attended and engaged in. And we will also be rolling out an evaluation survey to get your feedback on the Peer Learning Circles program for the year, hear about other topics that you would like to see in the future and how we can best help you meet your needs. We still have 9 minutes. I am happy to open the floor to any updates from partners and providers that you would like to share. So please feel free to raise your hand or come off mute if there's something you'd like to make the group aware of. I know everyone is pretty busy these days. I did just want, oh, yeah. Ruth, did you want to come off mute? To see if she finds it. I realize I neglected to introduce a new member of the Food Council team doing a Vista service year with us, and that is Janae Moss. So Janae, if you wouldn't mind waving your hand so folks know who you are. Janae is going to be working with us on capacity building initiatives, and we are hoping to share, what she learns to assist us as an organization with you, to assist you as an organization. So thrilled that she's with us now. And Bita is still with us, at least, through this month. So again, just a lot of appreciation for her service year through the Vista program. So. All right, if there is nothing more to share, I'm happy to give you 7 minutes back in your day. Thank you all for your time. And again, feel free to reach out to me, anything emergency planning related. We're happy to start collecting ideas for a future training on that. So thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.